Hey, bold leaders, it's Stacey Harris. I'm the podcast producer of this wonderful show, The Bold Money Revolution. You are, in fact, in the right place. I promise you're going to hear Tara in just a second. I wanted to jump in before you listen to today's episode and let you know the conversation Tara had with Diann is fantastic. They share a lot about entrepreneurship and neurodivergency. However, in the recording of it, there are some audio and technical glitches. We did the very best we could to clean them up, but this was just too good to not share with you. So we're asking for a little bit of grace on this one as you listen in. It's a really good episode. It's absolutely worth the listen. But I wanted to let you know, we know it was just too good not to share. Without any further ado, here's Tara.
Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. This is your source for straight talking, no fluff, business and high performance conversations that add real depth and value to the way bold leaders live, work, and thrive. I'm your host, Tara Newman. I'm here to show you how to optimize your performance as a leader so that you can grow a business that is profit-rich, efficient, and allows you to generate real, tangible wealth for yourself and others. We are here to help you lead with your values, to perform without overwhelm and burnout, and to do your most important work in the world. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. I'm here gracing your presence with my dear friend and my sister from another mister, Diann Wingert. She is a therapist by training and a coach by choice, and we are both ADHDers. At one point, when I first stumbled upon Diann online, she was coaching people with ADHD, but that has seemed to have now left her area of expertise. So I want to have a conversation with Diann today about the intersection of ADHD-like traits, distractibility, impulsivity, and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Diann.
This is one of my favorite conversations, so thank you for inviting me to have it, especially with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are we going to start with this? Kick us off. What's the top thing that we need to be talking about here in terms of entrepreneurship and the way we work? Really, that's what this is going to come down to, how we as humans work.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to start us off with some basic facts about being a woman with ADHD. Because if you are a woman and you suspect you have ADHD, you probably do. And the reason why I say that is because most females are not diagnosed in childhood. Most males are. The bottom line for that is that most females do not have as much physical hyperactivity as boys do. And it is the physical hyperactivity that little boys with ADHD have that cause them to be disruptive in the classroom. And teachers do not want to deal with that. So they get identified, they get referred, they oftentimes get medicated. And that's that. Girls, partly because we have more connections between our right and left hemispheres, partly because we're easier to socialize and condition to other people's expectations, and partly because the majority of us are not as physically hyperactive. Most girls will not disrupt the classroom. Now, I have combined type ADHD. I suspect you do too. And combined type ADHD means our physical hyperactivity manifests in the following ways. We talk a lot. We are very curious. We are always in need of something to do. We're constantly starting new projects, may not necessarily finish them. And none of that is necessarily a problem for a school teacher, right? So girls who become women usually don't find out that they have ADHD until much later in the game. And by the time they do, they are usually dealing with one or more of the following: an eating disorder, an addictive or alcohol problem, a spending problem, a problem with, and usually there's anxiety and or depression on board, because when you can't make your life work, you can't make your relationships work, you literally don't feel like you can get yourself together. You're going to eventually have a lot of anxiety because you're going to be very self-conscious about how other people perceive you, how you perceive yourself. And eventually you just wear yourself out and become depressed. But I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that there are literal tons of people right now who are identifying themselves as ADHD and talking about themselves as having ADHD. If you're on TikTok, you can't escape the awareness of this. Like everybody on TikTok is an ADHD expert suddenly, but not everybody who has ADHD traits would actually qualify for the diagnosis. And this is a critical factor because most entrepreneurs have these traits with or without a diagnosis.
Can we talk about TikTok for a second?
Love to.
So TikTok hurts my brain. And I tell myself it's that because of my ADHD. It makes it very, very bad. Are you able to like the 8 seconds and the constant scrolling, and it agitates the hell out of my brain. So I'm like, well, if you're on TikTok getting ADHD advice and you think you have ADHD, maybe it's just TikTok. And not that you actually have ADHD.
Okay, listen, we both know that all social media platforms are deliberately engineered to hook us, reel us in, and hold us captive. That's what they're there for. And they're very, very good at it. TikTok is the new kid on the block. And one of the reasons why it's growing faster than any social media platform has a right to do, and faster than any of the others have, is because of the short form content that is very stimulating to all brains, but especially to ADHD brains, maybe overstimulating to yours. But I think the other thing that is that hooks and captivates a lot of people, especially those with ADHD, is because you don't really know what's going to show up in your feed. That's the magic of TikTok. Every other social media platform, yes, you're going to see some stuff you don't expect to see, but you're mostly going to see stuff that you asked to see by following or liking somebody's stuff. With TikTok, they suggest things to you based on what you have viewed in the past. So the element of surprise is like crack for most people with ADHD because we always love novelty. Now, for you, I think you've trained your brain. You wouldn't be good with money, right? You've trained your brain, and maybe it's just so rapid, so much change that it's kind of disruptive and doesn't make you happy. But literally, I could stay there for 8 hours. I have to set a timer to make sure I don't. And this is another thing I should say, Tara. Oh. Everybody who has ADHD or is ADHD, because you can say I am ADHD or I have ADHD, they're both fine. It's just an identification issue. We're not all the same. Like, first of all, there's 3 different types, right? There's predominantly inattentive, distractible, predominantly hyperactive, impulsive, and combined, which is me and I suspect you. But even within those categories, there's tons and tons and tons of other things. People can have dyslexia, they can have other learning disabilities, they can have OCD, they can have so many other, there's a lot of things that travel with ADHD, but not everybody's ADHD looks the same. I love TikTok. You are like, no, hard no. So no wonder there's so many so-called experts because it's kind of confusing.
It is confusing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about how this helps or inhibits entrepreneurship.
Yes.
What say you, Diann?
Yeah, this is actually a really, really great question because, and one of the things I think is confusing about ADHD is that there's a big camp that's like, this is a disorder. This is a downright disability. Like if you have ADHD, let me just say, like you're more likely to have an addiction. You're more likely to have a bunch of unpaid traffic tickets. You're more likely to be divorced. You're more likely to lose your job. You're more likely, and all of that, you're more likely to go to jail. All of those things are true. So how is it possible that this disabling disorder that statistically speaking could cause you to drop out of school, become an addict, become homeless, go to jail, can't keep a job, can't keep a relationship, yada, yada, yada. And we have plenty of data out there. How is it possible that other people call this very same condition the entrepreneurial superpower. Say, what? Like, how's that possible? And here's what I think. I think when it comes to ADHD, and while I don't like to call myself an expert of anything, I call myself a lifelong learner and a relentlessly curious human. So if I'm interested in something, I just do a face plant into everything that's ever been said about it and just keep going. I have ADHD. I've lovingly passed it on to all three of my kids. Thanks, Mom, before I knew I had it. And I've been working in the field first as a psychotherapist for many years, and then many of my clients have ADHD. I think the number one thing that will either help ADHD be, in a way, an unfair advantage, Tara, or an hindrance is goodness of fit between you and your environment. Meaning, if you are a person who doesn't want to sit still, don't, for the love of God, get a desk job, but you could be a park ranger, right? So you could, we need, people like us need to have environments for work and the rest of life that are well suited to our minds and brains. If you're able to pull that off, and the two most important things, I agree with Dr. Ned Hallowell on these two things. The two most important things a person with ADHD needs to do are choose the right career path and choose the right partner. Why do so many of us choose entrepreneurship? Well, I think the reason why so many of us choose entrepreneurship is because we literally get to write our own ticket. Think about it. When you take a job, you are given a job description, and in most environments, you will be told how to do it. I think of ADHD as more like, when I was in school and I got a math problem, I only got credit for getting the right answer if I could show my work. But people with ADHD are neurodivergent. We go about things differently. We need to do things our way. So if my way of getting to the right answer wasn't the approved way, I didn't get credit. But it's like, but wait a minute, I got the right answer. Yes, but you didn't go about it the right way. Well, when you're an entrepreneur, you get to decide what the right way is for you. You do not necessarily have to follow the prescribed course of action. So that is extremely appealing. Also, people with ADHD tend to be much more risk tolerant. And I think this comes from the fact that most of us are much more impulsive. So we literally take a flying leap into something before we've really thought it through. And then on the way, I like to say we go off the high dive without checking if there's water in the pool. And then on the way down, we automatically figure out some sort of a parachute or, something or other. But you have to be a risk taker to start a business. And if you're also a quick problem solver, a creative problem solver, an out of the box thinker, then even though you may make a lot of mistakes because of those risks, you often figure out what you need to do to fix them. And the third trait is we tend to get over things much more quickly than other people. And it's because we always want to move on. So we make a mistake. We're like, oh shit, I wish I hadn't done that. Well, that really sucks. That wasn't what I had in mind. Well, you know what? It's not so bad. I'm going to do this instead. And then we just move on. Whereas sometimes, like if you have a marital partner or your team, they're like, what just happened? If they don't have ADHD, they kind of need to process what happened. We're already on to the next thing. So you can see how, this sort of personality type, quick ideas, quick to act, more resilient, because people who are risk takers tend to make more mistakes in general. So if we can then figure out how to course correct from that and move on, I don't think it's a superpower necessarily, but if you have ADHD and you know how to leverage the strengths and manage the struggles, I think it definitely can be an advantage.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Because for me, I can say that I think my self-awareness plus the ADHD is what became my superpower. So I was aware that I was struggling with things, and I became curious about finding solutions for those struggles, which led me down a path of wild executive functioning skills through creating habits and structure. I'm an incredibly structured, process-driven checklist, which sounds weird for an ADHDer.
No. All the successful people with ADHD are like that.
I didn't realize. Okay. Thank you. So because I didn't get diagnosed until I was 44. And that's when I started to experiment, as I call it, with medication. So I was like, this doesn't feel good to be this. This doesn't feel good for me. So like, how do I feel good? And like, I feel good with habits and structure and process, and that all calms my nervous system, and it calms my anxiety, and it calms some of those. I don't know if it necessarily calms my impulsivity, because yes, I can be a quick decision maker. I'm very okay with risk. I don't give a lot of shits about a lot of things. So that stuff really resonates. Two things that I think have particularly been challenging for me as a business owner that I've had to work through: one, rejection sensitivity. So it's really hard to do sales and have difficult conversations, which I know you and I both have a great skill set in. Boundaries, those are all things that with my rejection sensitivity, I think were really a struggle. And the only reason why I was remotely decent at it is because they were actually challenging for me. So I've really had to learn. And again, I think that curiosity. And then the other thing is my brain can be really stubborn. Yes, impulsive, but I didn't realize how stubborn my brain could be and how hard it could be for me to follow instruction or just do it the way other people are doing it. There's no reason to recreate the wheel all the time. Yes, I can make it mine, but follow the path of someone before you and let that inform how you can make it your own, not constantly trying to like recreate the wheel. And when I stopped trying to constantly recreate the wheel and take what somebody else did and create a framework for it that allowed me the space to be creative and make it my own, that's when my business really started to thrive, not stubbornly resisting everything because it was somebody else's idea.
This is a really great example, Tara, of how a neurological difference, the way our brains work, becomes a personality trait. But with self-awareness and a willingness to figure it out, we can achieve mastery. So what you just said was basically, sometimes my brain is really stubborn. And that is, we can be very rigid about doing things our way. Because think about it this way. Like probably I don't know what the current numbers are, because women over 40 are a very rapidly growing group of people being identified and diagnosed with ADHD. But let's say it's something like 4.3%, don't quote me, somewhere in the 4% category of adults have been diagnosed with ADHD. I believe anecdotally that we make up about 10% of all adults, which means, so most people, for every person that's been officially diagnosed, there's like 2.5 people that haven't. My math sucks, by the way. But that means that either people are suspecting they may be diagnosable and refusing to be diagnosed, because let's face it, who wants a disorder? This diagnosis needs a makeover because it has deficit and disorder in the name. It's like, thank you, but no, it needs a new title. It's got a real PR problem, but people don't want a stigmatizing diagnosis, even though it's probably less stigmatizing than it used to be. So they don't get diagnosed. But also if you figure out how to work with these things and your life is not really impaired, you're not actually diagnosable. This is the one thing that most people don't understand. And I also want to say something about rejection sensitivity. If you have all the traits, and you can go down the list, there's like 18 different things. If you have 11 of them, you meet criteria. But just having those traits doesn't mean you have ADHD. You have to have enough of the traits plus impairment. Now, many men who are successful entrepreneurs have a wife, girlfriend, secretary, executive assistant who are literally taking all of the executive functioning challenges off their plate and handling it for them. So that man gets to just do what he does best, and he can be wildly successful. Meanwhile, I've worked with some of these wives and girlfriends. They are losing their shit on a regular basis because he can be difficult to manage. But is it actually a diagnosis if you don't have the impairment? I say, if you take away the supports, the people and the structures that keep you focused, that allow you to follow through and allow you to finish, if you take away those supports, are you impaired? And yes, that's how you could be diagnosed. That's how I could be diagnosed. But most of the really, really successful people who have these traits, whether they've gotten themselves diagnosed or not, if they have a lot of structure in their life, they won't be impaired. And structure, like all behavior, is habit forming if you don't resist it or resent it. Now, the rejection sensitivity, I've probably done 15 or 20 podcast interviews on this topic, because something that makes me a little crazy is how many people who either just found out they have ADHD or they haven't officially been diagnosed but suspect they do, so they've kind of claimed it, are talking about rejection sensitive dysphoria. And they are calling it RSD, and they're treating it like it's an additional diagnosis, like OCD. First of all, it's a part of ADHD. It is not a separate diagnosis. It is also part of the makeup of most highly creative people, most gifted people, almost all artists, empaths, highly sensitive. Like, ADHD folks don't corner the market on rejection sensitivity. So I just refer to it as rejection sensitivity. If you're creative, if you're gifted, if you have ADHD, if you're an empath, if you're highly sensitive, you will probably struggle with rejection. And that means you will probably be less likely to put yourself out there, probably less likely to really demonstrate your genuine gifts, less likely to ask for what you want, whether it's money or other things in relationships. And if you perceive that you're going to get a no, or that they are thinking something negatively of you for asking, you will probably silence yourself to avoid the profound, dysphoria, negative mood, low mood, kind of sort of a depressive mood that comes with that feeling of rejection. You don't even have to be rejected. You have to perceive that you're being rejected or that you are being thought of in a negative way. That covers a lot of territory, right? Just like, well, I can't put myself out there because people might not like it. That'll shut you down.
Oh gosh, this has probably been the single most painful part of being an entrepreneur, especially in the online business space for me. And the torment and the torture of working through this over the last 8 years has been, I don't even know if I have words for it. It's been painful. It's been seriously painful. And people look at me and they're like, you're so confident and you're amazing. And I'm like, I don't know how to explain to you how devastatingly hard this has been and how much I understand when you all come to me and you're like, I can't do Facebook Lives. I can't do this. I can't do that. I get it. Like, and yet, let's find the things you can do.
And yet, I'm certain, Tara, that you have found ways and continue to look for ways to manage it effectively. This is a lot of the work I do, because if you are an entrepreneur, whether you might call yourself a freelancer or, whatever, if you generate your own income from your own effort, you basically have to be in marketing and sales. You have to.
Mm-hmm.
So being in marketing and sales, which just very fundamentally means letting people know what you do, communicating the value of what you do, and inviting people to buy from you. You have to do that. And in order to do that effectively, you have to manage your rejection sensitivity, because otherwise it'll stop you from ever sharing what you have to offer with other people, because you will be so terrified that they may find fault with you. And not even necessarily, it doesn't even have to be about the value of what you do. It could be worrying as a woman that other people will think you're too bold. Like you use the word bold and you're using your marketing. I use the word driven. Like I actually had a person tell me once that she decided not to work with me because I was too confident. And I thought,
yes, I'm too grounded. I'm too grounded or masculine.
Oh, girl, we could really go on a wild ride about that. I actually now, because I happen to be very tall and my name is Diann, I'm now referring to it as big D energy, because I want to own this masculine energy that I have been told all my life that I have. It used to confuse me. I think people used to use it to try to shut me down, and not just men. Gay men love me, by the way. Straight men, not so much. And other women, not so much. But what I've learned is if I'm going to let them dominate me because I'm afraid of what they might think, I decide they're probably thinking it anyway, no matter what I do, no matter how much I try to dim it, suppress it, quiet it down, shut it down. And I need to be concerned about the people who will be attracted to it, not the ones who will throw shade on it. And I happen to be Buddhist, and I work very hard on managing my mind, because you can get completely hijacked by fear of what other people might think. Ask yourself, just tell yourself they probably are. And like we try so hard to change our behavior because of what we think other people will think of our genuine behavior, when in fact, no matter what you do, they're probably going to think it anyway. And if that's so what? Well, they won't like me. They weren't going to like you anyway. Yeah, but they might talk shit about me. Possible. They may talk shit about me online to other people who wouldn't like you. I think it's a shortcut to finding your people, to be all of who you are, even though it means you are risking rejection on a bigger scale. I know you believe that too, even though it's painful.
Yeah. So that's where I've basically landed, right? Like after all the years of turning myself inside out about, I should say, but it's not for me. My ADHD journey is the first thing that I realized when I was diagnosed was every single person's objection to me, criticism of me, feedback of me on a performance appraisal, on a school form. My mother was in relationship to an ADHD behavior.
Yep.
And so I grew up and have all these stories around filtering.
Yes.
Filter, because my impulsive speech was embarrassing, or my impulsive speech wasn't correct in some way. Right. So it took me a lot of therapy and coaching to move through that belief that I constantly have to filter. And then once I took the filter off,
you found
and
your
started
people.
to trust that I'm a good person, right? But like trust that I'm a good person, and that, I'm not going to get myself into a situation that I can't get myself out of. And if I did, I've got good communication skills, and I'm happy to apologize for, and make repair for what I might have said or done, I became less exhausted.
This is such a good reminder.
Yeah, I started to free up so much time and space for the things that I could do that actually move my business forward.
You know what? I don't think many people realize how much of their chronic fatigue, and I don't mean the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome, but like if you're always tired, and many of us are, I don't know how many people recognize that a significant percentage of that is from masking. A significant percentage of that is because we are literally layering who we actually are with all of these. It's kind of like putting on Instagram filters. You got one for freckles, you got one for red hair, you got one that makes you look like a dog or a horse or whatever. It's like we have been doing that all of our lives because, especially as women, like if you were the inattentive, distractible type, you would be a dreamer. You would be sitting in the classroom, looking out the window, watching the butterflies dance in the tree, or you might be doodling on a piece of paper, or you might be in your head writing stories and fantasizing, and you wouldn't be a problem to anyone because you wouldn't be disrupting anything, but you wouldn't get very good grades. You will probably be thought of as not very smart. And people would just lower their expectations for you, and you would eventually adopt that. If you are more the combined type, like I think you and I are, we probably were doing a little bit of wiggling. We might have been impatient to get out to recess or maybe late getting back from lunch. We are probably too chatty for some people's taste. And that can get you a little bit of negative feedback. But I'll tell you, a couple of the nicknames that I used to get were oblivious. I was called oblivious on a regular basis because if something wasn't sufficiently interesting to me, I would just go into my head. And I mean, I got so much fantasy material in there. I can always entertain myself. But if I'm not interested in what's going on around me, I would just go in my head and entertain myself with something else. And then somebody would say something and expect a response from me, or they would flat out say my name. And I'd be like, huh? And you're like, you are just totally oblivious. Well, I check out when I'm bored. And so how you become exhausted is, okay, I don't check out. Act like you're interested. Act like you're paying attention. Nod your head, smile, all that stuff, because people get offended when you aren't paying attention. But you're not actually paying attention. You're just pretending to be. And that is fucking exhausting. It also becomes not even second nature. It becomes like your first nature because women are socially conditioned to be likable. And so it is freaking exhausting. And once you take all that off, once you stop masking and you actually let people know who you are, some of them are not going to like it for real.
Yeah. Yep.
And they may be people you've known forever.
With that. So I tend to be the inattentive, although my thoughts are impulsive. And when I do speak, it can be impulsive speech. Mm-hmm. And it used to be terrifying for me as a kid in school because I would lose track of time. I mean, the bell would ring. I mean, I would lose in huge chunks of time. I barely made it into college. So I love everybody who thinks they have to be like perfect and smart and all these things to run a business, be successful and make money. But like, I barely made it into college. My grades were so poor, even though I was really intelligent and bright. And, what I found very recently, an insight that I had, and I've never shared this before anywhere. So good job, Diann, on holding a space. But what I realized was I started to become really dissatisfied with coaching. And really struggle with it. And I've coached my entire life. My background in industrial organizational psychology was the birthplace of coaching. And people would ask me, they'd be like, why do you call yourself a coach when all these online shitty coaches exist? And I'm like, well, that's what I've just done. Like, I don't know, like the online business space didn't create coaching. Like, that's just been who I am. Mm-hmm. And so it started to get really heavy and I started to get really burned out on it. And I couldn't figure out why until probably about 6 months ago when I realized that coaching competencies are the exact opposite of all the criticism that I have garnered in my life. And that coaching for me is actually the mask. And really what I want to be doing is teaching. And that was so wildly shocking because like coaching competencies are active listening, you reflect back, you ask good questions. And I'm someone who's just telling people all the time. I'm like in advisory mode. I'm teleassertive. I do stop and ask questions, but it takes some thoughtful planning. And it could be very draining if I'm doing it hours a day, like I had been coaching. So really my gift and where I'm happiest is teaching with really good coaching skills, but that the coach part of this was definitely a mask for me.
That makes so much sense, Tara. And you know what it also reminds me of is one of the questions I'm most frequently asked is, you're a UCLA educated, trained psychotherapist. I have a master's degree, I have a clinical license, I'm a board certified diplomat. I've done tons and tons and tons of advanced training. And you, quote unquote, gave all that up to become a coach, which basically anybody can be. Like, you don't have to be certified. You don't have to be, it's totally unregulated. I mean, you can literally call yourself a coach and boom, you're a coach. Why would you do that? Even my husband was like, why are you leaving a profession of a highly trained, skilled professional to literally jump in the boat with all these randos? And I don't like the term coach either, for the record. I am 1 part strategist, 1 part consultant, 1 part mentor. I do some coaching, but one of the main reasons why I left being a therapist, I had a very successful private practice after many years of being a professor of social work, created programs, led programs. I was clinical director of a large agency. I was definitely on the academic path. The last 5 years in that field, I had a private practice. It was very successful. But I realized, Tara, at some point that I had outgrown my interest and my willingness to hold space for people to feel better about where they were. I was really growing impatient with them to move on from where they were. And I think to really be a good therapist, you have to be able to be very present for people in whatever level of suffering they're in and gently guide them out at the pace they're able and willing to go. And my philosophy at some point was, we have literally been talking about the same loss for 5 years. Don't you want to get on with the rest of your life? Now, obviously, that was my inside voice. I wasn't sharing that, but I happen to be Buddhist. My philosophy is we're all going to be dead in a minute. We don't know if it's literally a minute or if it's going to be 30, 40 years from now, but life should be an adventure. It should be a journey, and we should always be developing ourselves, not necessarily checking off tasks, or I'm not talking about toxic productivity. I'm talking about developing ourselves. And I felt at some point that I really wasn't helping people move forward in their lives. I was helping them feel better about where they were. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. And when I told the clients that I had at that time that I was closing the practice, I would refer them out to therapists if they wanted to continue with therapy. But the ones I thought could actually have been done with it and maybe work with a coach, they were not open to the idea. So while I do think there's a lot of coaches out there who are practicing therapy without a license, and I think a lot of potential harm is being done, there haven't been any high profile cases that I'm aware of, but it's just a matter of time. I also think the opposite is true, that people can get just a little bit too comfortable in therapy mode. And as a result of that, fail to move forward in their life in a meaningful way. I'm not speaking to everybody in therapy by no means, but you can get kind of stranded there.
To be honest, you can get stranded in coaching too.
Same. Yep.
I think humans are remarkably resistant to progress, even though it's the thing that they want. And that's what holds people back in their businesses, because women will come to me all the time and they'll say, like, how long is this going to take? And I'm like, well, how long is it going to take you? Right? Like, how quickly can you move through discomfort, through, healing? And people are like, well, I need to heal and then do the things in my business. And I'm like, no, the healing comes through doing the things in the business and to challenging yourself. So make that comparison for me to entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Or like what you were just saying to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. What I learned, and tell me if I'm not answering the specific question, because, sometimes I think I am and I'm not, and we can come back at it from a different angle. What I think is a lot of entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, in my experience and observation, spend far too much time getting ready. They often think that I need one more certification, I need one more mastermind. I don't feel ready to take this particular action, whether it's starting the business, growing the business, scaling the business, hiring a team, like whatever it is. If I don't subjectively feel ready, it's because I'm lacking something. So I need to work with this particular coach, or I need to join this particular group, or sometimes they think they need more therapy. Oftentimes they think they need more coaching. Many times they think they need another certification or some sort of. I recorded an episode for my podcast called There Is No Magic Pill. And it is because I think the industry, the online business industry and the coaching industry, which oftentimes are the same, offer people the illusion of magic pills, like, 6 weeks to 6 figures, or, dream clients while you sleep, and all this nonsense. What actually moves your game piece forward is not thinking, it's not planning, and it's definitely not preparing. It is taking imperfect action. It is the only thing that moves the needle. It is the only thing that reveals to you what your actual sticking point is. And the majority of us will do anything but that. You have to take action. And unfortunately, when I first started doing this work, I don't think I really leaned all the way into what a powerful change agent I'm capable of by allowing the client to kind of take their sweet ass time. And what I realized is that you kind of have to require people to move forward if you actually want to have a transformation in working with you. And if they're not willing to take action, I don't let them hire me anymore, because they may feel inspired, they may feel informed, they may feel transformed. But if I can't see tangible progress in the right direction with deliverables, I have failed them. I think you probably feel the same. You have to take action to learn what you need to do differently.
I do feel the same. And I have released clients with love and care saying, I don't think we can take this any further. It doesn't make any sense for you to keep paying me at this point. I might not be the right person for you. This might not be the right avenue. I'm not really sure what that is, but continuing on doing what we're doing isn't going to get you a different result. And, definitely in that perspective. And, I am here for implementation. So the Bold Profit Academy is an implementation container. Implementation is what I actually do well. Doing the thing. Let's just take action, collect data, reassess. It's a big science experiment. Let's put this business through the scientific method. But unless we're willing to take action, we're dead in the water. And so I'm with you. I see a lot of, especially women, just waiting and I don't know if it's waiting for permission. It's ready, waiting to be ready, waiting. And I'm like, please, can we stop with the waiting? Can we please stop with the waiting?
Well,
Can we please stop with the indecision?
Yeah. And
we need to make progress, ladies. It's now. It's go time.
Yes. And you know what? I think you said a moment ago, Tara, that, we don't want to make progress. My take on it is we want to make progress without experiencing change. And yes. I do think that people with ADHD tend to be more friendly to change than others. It goes with the risk taking. However, and some of us may be so change friendly that we're constantly changing our mind, changing our business model, changing our marketing strategy. And that's one of the other things that kind of has to be reeled in, because I'm all for experimentation, but if we don't do something consistently enough, long enough, we don't really have any data as to whether it worked or not. So we can't constantly change. So I think there tends to be, within the ADHD entrepreneur community, there tends to be either people that are very rigid and don't want to change, or they're constantly, people call it shiny object syndrome. They're constantly trying something new because they're looking for that magic pill. What I think we have to be able to do is, and I've actually empowered my team to do this with me, because I'm constantly getting a new idea. And whatever new idea I'm getting is the best idea I've ever had, because it's like, it's hot off the press. I'm totally infatuated. It's the best idea I've ever had. I have to stop everything I'm doing and chase this idea immediately. And I realized that I did that for many years. And, somebody said to me, you'll get a lot further down the field if you kick one soccer ball 6 times than if you kick 6 different soccer balls 1 time each. And I was like, I don't play soccer. Why are you even talking to me like this? I understand it now. And it's being able to choose, of the millions of good ideas you have, the one you're going to commit to doing, forsaking all others, like say your vows to this idea for a year, and see how far you can move it down the game board. Because if you keep changing, which many of us tend to want to do, you're just going to go around in circles and watch people who don't know a third of what you know pass you by every day, which is infuriating. So your structures,
but Diann,
help.
But Diann, that's boring. I don't feel creative doing that. That doesn't feel good in my body.
I know. And especially with that. No,
I'm just giving you what I hear.
Honey, especially
because I want you to come back with the response.
Especially with that whiny little tone. I'm having flashbacks here. Okay. The truth is, we do have a low threshold. We have a low threshold for boredom, and we have a low tolerance of boredom. But what actually makes you successful in business is probably not going to be super exciting every single day. You have to find ways to be creative and ways to get your needs met, but it's not your business's job to excite you. And, it's not, we give our businesses jobs that they're not meant to carry. I do think you absolutely have to find ways to make things fun so that you can sustain them. And one of the ways I do it is, there are some things that are not that intrinsically interesting to me in my business. And sometimes what you need to do is hire someone to do them for you, because they're important. They move your game piece, and you literally freaking despise them. You would rather stab yourself in the eye with a fork. So don't try to do it. Get someone else to do it. But if you have to do it and you're resisting it, can you find a more creative way to do it? And if you can't do that, then I play beat the clock. I have a big ass timer, and it's like, because most of us have always been late, running late, barely getting anywhere at the last minute. And that is part of the ADHD personality type. So leverage that in your business by assigning a period of time to get that boring task done and play beat the clock and see how quickly you can get it done. And then give yourself a freaking reward. You can do that.
Yeah. I'm big on asking the question, what would make this fun?
Yes.
What would feel exciting about doing this? How can we do this in a way that is energizing for you? Because I think a lot of times we get stuck in, black or white thinking. It's either this way or that way. It's this way or that way. It's very binary. And the reality is it's not. We can get to the result in a lot of different ways, but how can we get to the result in the quickest, most energizing and fun way, even if it's something that maybe doesn't feel fun? And let's face it, like for me, working with people on sales, like nobody thinks sales is fun initially. But you are the commission salesperson in your business. So if you want to eat, put food on your table, create profit, create the wealth that you want to create in your life, like we need to figure out a way to do that in a way that feels fun and energizing and in alignment with your values and your strengths. And there's lots of ways that we can be creative in doing that. But I really appreciate you sharing the message that you did. I love teeing up my guests to deliver hard messages that I've delivered, but sometimes I think don't get through because it's me. So they just need to hear it in a different voice. So thank you very much for that, Diann. The other thing that I want to just challenge as well, and maybe you have a solution to this, or we can talk about it. What about the using ADHD or ADHD traits? And I don't want to use the word excuse, but I'm going to use the word excuse because I don't have another word to use right now. And so feel free to correct me. But I do this because I'm ADHD. I can't do this because I'm ADHD. I can't batch my content because I'm ADHD. I can't I can't be consistent with anything because #ADHD. And I got to tell you something. I am the most consistent human known to man I'm convinced, right? Because of my ADHD, because I've had to teach myself how to do this. And that has made all the difference because I keep hearing from people, sales are just dribbling in, or I'm tired of feeling like I'm always starting over. Well, those two things could easily be solved when you know, one, what the right tasks are to do, and then you do them every day. If we want to I want to make money every day. Well, then you have to do the making money tasks every day.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? And everything in our business isn't sexy and everything in our business isn't fun. And I think, like you said before, I used to teach time management. And then as time went on and I worked with more and more people, I started teaching energy management. Now I teach expectation management.
Yes.
And it sort of incorporates all of those things. And I think about what we expect of ourselves, what we expect of others. And there's usually a lot of emotions around that. Now, I think some people like call out, oh, it's the millennials. I'm like, no, don't do that. There are people of all generations who think things should be more easy and more fun than they actually are. It's not just the millennials. And by the way, the boomers are responsible for them. So how's that working for you? But because usually the people that are complaining are boomers. The reality is, when I used to train people to be clinical social workers, one of the first questions I asked them in the interview to screen whether I was going to become their supervisor or whether I was going to assign them to someone else is, tell me why you're in this business. Why did you decide to become a therapist? I think everybody has a story for why they do what they do, and I am interested in people's stories. So how did you come into this? And in this case, why did you decide to start a business? And I'm listening for certain things. And then I ask them, and how long do you want to stay in business? Now, people usually are a little off-put by these questions because they're just not used to being asked. First of all, if all the social media posts that you have been exposed to for the last 5 years tell you that you want to be a boss babe and you want to, own a business and, you want to make money in your sleep and blah, 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 then you don't even know why you think you want a business and you might not actually want one. So when we ask people, why do you want a business? Tell me everything. And then how long do you want to stay in business? Some people know from the beginning, I just want to grow it to a certain point and then I want to get someone else to run it for me while I go do whatever. Or I want to grow it to a certain point and then I want to sell it. Most people haven't really thought it through, just like they haven't thought through a lot of the money stuff. They haven't thought through a lot of the profit stuff. So, and sadly, this has been true of me too. Most people give up a job to start a business that ends up just being a job without benefits. And that's a hard, uncomfortable truth that most of us aren't facing. So when we're not facing the fundamental truth that we haven't set up our business to generate wealth and to be profitable, we expect things of that business that are grossly unrealistic. We expect it to be fulfilling. We expect it to be exciting. We expect to want to get up every day. Just can't wait to get my butt in the chair and start creating content or seeing clients or whatever. I don't know of anyone who has that every single day. So I think the hard work that some of us actually need to do that we're not doing is to develop the self-awareness and the insight through experimentation and asking ourselves good questions that we haven't asked is, when am I at my most creative? What environment helps me focus more easily? How many hours can I work at a stretch without feeling bored, depleted, whatever? Like, I believe that working for ourselves represents the single greatest opportunity to craft a business and lifestyle around our strengths and struggles. But most of us don't do that work. We just copy what some, internet guru is doing and then wonder why we're not loving it. Do the work and figure out, when are you creative? When are you tired? When are you frustrated? When can you focus better? You can literally craft a business around that. And I'll tell you this, I've been living with chronic pain for half my life. I had a very bad car accident and it left me with chronic pain that I've been living with for a very long time. So I wake up early. I have energy for 5 hours, and then I need a 3-hour break before I can work anymore. So I eat, I read, and I take a nap. Then it's kind of like a split shift. I couldn't have done that if I was working for someone else. So I created that for myself. I know how many consecutive hours I can work without losing focus or getting fatigued, or I know how many people I can interview for my podcast in a row before I'm not showing up as my best. So I'm curious like you, and I was willing to spend the time to figure out what kind of business would serve me best and allow me to sustain it for as long as I want to. So I think instead of expecting our business to entertain us or make us feel good about ourselves without effort, we need to be willing to expend a little bit of effort to create the business that can do all that and more. And it's not automagic or overnight. Did that answer your question?
Full stop. That's a wrap. Yeah, no, listen, that was brilliant and true and poignant. And I hope that everybody just hits rewind and listens to that quite a few times, because, I have people who, like, when we talk about business values and they say, oh, my business value is adventure. I'm like, no, are you sure? Because I think your personal value is adventure. And in that case, you want your business to be as simple as possible so that you can go and have those adventures. I don't want my business to be adventurous. I like adventure, but I want my business to be as simple as possible so that I can go have those adventures in somewhere else in my life. And I think what you touched on there about all the reasons why you wanted to have a business and how you spend your day really elucidates a point that I've been trying to make. Women think they want an online business, and I'm using air quotes here,
Yeah,
online business. But what they actually want is what Diann just shared. They want something that is fully remote, that you don't need to be going into an office and on somebody else's schedule. You want a non-linear schedule. That is exactly what Diann has. She has her energy in the morning. She takes a break in the middle of the day. She comes back to her work. I do the same. And we want to be able to have a way of working that allows us to do the deep, focused work without distraction, because that is where our most important work comes from. The thing that we are the most proud of is in that creativity of deep work that deep work allows for. So what people and women actually want is a fully remote business that allows them to work asynchronously for deep work purposes and non-linearly for energetic purposes. Online business and online business models are the exact opposite of what they actually want. So thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Because I want them to go and find you. You have a podcast.
Yep.
You have other things.
So the podcast, I like to say, if you like the sound of my voice and what I have to say with it, you don't mind a little salty language and very direct opinions, then you're going to want to head on over in your podcast player to the Driven Woman Entrepreneur. There's a very cute picture of me in my pre-COVID body with a big smile flexing. And you can find my website at Diann Wingert Coaching, but don't you dare give me an E. It's DIANN. And there's a kind of a fun quiz on that website called What's Holding Me Back. I'm sure Tara will also pop it into the show notes to make it easy peasy for you to take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Diann. And is there something you want to leave with the audience with, something that you've left unsaid so far?
Oh, I think we covered a lot of territory. I would say that I think the most significant thing we need to do as a woman in business is to let people know all of who we really are and be willing to fully accept the consequences of that decision. Your most powerful self, your most genuine self, your awesome sauce, your magic, your unfair advantage, what you are literally here to share, will never be fully experienced if you are people-pleasing and following other gurus. You be the frickin' guru. You lead the people you're here to lead. Nobody can teach you how to do that. You take the steps, you find your way.
Whew. We're leaving it there. Thanks, Diann.
Poof.
Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
If you found this podcast valuable, help us develop more bold leaders in the world by sharing this episode with your friends, colleagues, and other bold leaders. Also, if you haven't done so already, please leave a review. I consider reviews like podcast currency, and it's the one thing you can do to help us out here at the Bold Leadership Revolution HQ. We would be so grateful for it. Special thanks goes to Stacey Harris from Uncommonly More, who is the producer and editor of this podcast. Go check them out for all your digital marketing and content creation needs. Be sure to tune into the next episode to help you embrace your ambition and leave the grind behind.